In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand. On the cusp of a new age, in the heart of Ur, a woman awaited a promise sworn long ago. Sarai, wife of Abram, known for her beauty and virtuous spirit, felt the shadows of her barrenness loom larger than faith itself. As the stars twinkled like scattered diamonds against the velvety night, Abram spoke of encounters with the Almighty, his heart aflame with hope. His eyes, bright with anticipation, spoke of nations and descendants, words spoken directly from the throne of God. The promise shall come, Sarai, as certain as the stars in the sky, he declared, invigorated by faith. Yet, as she nestled in the warmth of his voice, deep inside, the bitter pang of disappointment twisted her heart. How could it be, with an empty womb and the relentless whispers that haunted her every step? A moment of silence filled the tent, the kind that hangs heavy with unspoken fears and dreams deferred. How can this be? She murmured, more to herself than to him, feeling the corners of her mouth twist into a half-hearted laugh, an echo of disbelief. It pierced the tranquil night, a laugh that mingled with sorrow, reverberating her deep-seated desolation. Yet, amidst her weariness, a profound tremor rippled through the air, as though the divine was preparing to break in. The whisper that came next shattered the silence. It was the voice that only she could hear, the Lord speaking intimately. Sarai, you will bear a son, and you shall name him Isaac. The proclamation hung in the air, mighty yet tender, defying all human logic. Sarai's heart wrestled within her, a tempest of disbelief and burgeoning hope. The very idea of carrying life after all these years seemed absurd yet wondrous at once. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Sarai, held captive by her past, envisioned the women who gathered to speak of the joys of their children, their lives woven with the laughter of newborns and the light of familial legacy. In contrast, she felt the isolation of a woman whose worth was scrutinized in a culture steeped in fertility. Yet in that moment, a flicker ignited within her, a spark of faith that possibly, after a lifetime of yearning, her laughter might one day resonate with joy rather than despair. But how does one transition from disbelief to joy? Sarai pondered the weight of such a promise. Could she embrace this role within God's magnificent tapestry? If she dared to believe, how might that reshape her identity? The night was pregnant with expectancy, her restless spirit wrestling with divine assurance. What lay ahead was shrouded in the mystery of God's unfolding plan, an invitation to journey from desolation to hope, from sorrow to unspeakable joy, echoing the divine melody that whispered through the ages, urging her to take the bold step into faith. And it came to pass that Sarai, though burdened with doubt, began to ponder the miraculous promise spoken to her. Within the dim light of the tent, she found herself wrestling with the enormity of her calling, her heart caught between what had always been and the whispered truth of what could be. The night deepened around her, the hush of the desert wrapping her in solitude, the stars above standing witness to her struggle. Is anything too hard for the Lord? She recalled Abram's fervent words spoken during their conversations. Doubt had plagued her heart, but now, they echoed like a clarion call, beckoning her to confront her fears. In that moment of contemplation, Sarai felt the stirrings of faith rising, a seed cautiously taking root in arid ground. The dawn broke gently, casting pink and golden hues over the land, a visual hymn of new beginnings. Sarai rose early, gazing at the sun as it danced upon the earth, illuminating her path with grace. If God had indeed spoken, would she not walk in the light of his promise? Her heart began to swell with hope, the flicker within now kindling into a fire of resolve. Abram, awakened by her new fervor, watched as Sarai approached him with a joyful countenance. Perhaps, she breathed, it is possible. The words were tentative, yet each syllable dripped with the sweet nectar of newfound belief. Perhaps our covenant with the Almighty is at hand. Though Abram felt the weight of their journey, he recognized the shift in Sarai. Indeed, he said, his voice steadier than before. He who called us from Ur knows our names and our deepest longings. As days turned to weeks, Sarai's hope did not wane. The promise whispered in the night began to take tangible form in her spirit. Yet, shadows still loomed. The whispers of the world, the pressures of societal expectations, pressed upon her heart like heavy stones. With every passing month, anticipation and anxiety danced together, but now she found strength in community and fellowship. In time, Sarai found herself seeking out women among her kin, sharing bread and stories, weaving a tapestry of support in fellowship. They spoke of their own trials, of gods that let them down and the heartaches that accompanied their unfulfilled desires. Sarai shared the burden of her barrenness and the promise she had received, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Take heart," an elder woman advised, wrapped in wisdom. "Remember, God often moves in mystery. He molds the barren to bring forth life that glories His name." Encouraged by their shared journeys, Sarai began to seek the Lord more fervently, her prayers an outpouring of honest supplications. The more she prayed, the more her heart rejoiced in the assurance that God's plan was grander than her understanding. She saw the tiny buds of belief blossom, as God's purpose unfolded, wrapping around her heart like a warm embrace, yet still, in the distance, echoes of a divine call lingered, unfulfilled and waiting. One night, when the moon shone brightly, illuminating the vast expanse above, the Lord spoke again, an echo of His eternal promise. "Sarai, your son is coming, and through him, nations will rise." As her spirit soared, a realization dawned upon Sarai, deeper than joy, a sacred understanding that she was part of something much larger, a divine plan that would resound through generations. How could she have doubted, but unbeknownst to her, in the layers of history, beyond the horizon of her lifetime, God was weaving a story of mighty significance. The promise of her son would reach far and wide, touching lives and destinies yet unknown, and thus, prepared for the miraculous that was to unfold, Sarai stood resolute, ready to embrace the future. Little did she know that beyond the tent, the sands of time were shifting, and a great revelation awaited to unveil God's sovereign plan. What she did not yet perceive was that the miracle being formed within her was but the beginning of a legacy that would echo through ages, forever bound to His unshakable covenant. And it came to pass that Sarai, invigorated by a spirit of hope, began to prepare her tent with renewed purpose. Each stitch of the woven fabric seemed to echo her burgeoning faith. She carefully placed beside the fire vessels filled with flour and oil, for the heart of hospitality was now woven into her daily life. In her mind, she could hear the distant sounds of laughter and celebration, as she envisioned the day when her home would be filled with children's voices. Amidst these thoughts, Abram entered the tent, his brow etched with concern. "What troubles you, my beloved?" he asked, sensing the weight of unspoken thoughts shadowing her joy. Sarai paused, taking a deep breath that carried both anticipation and unease. "I feel the weight of promise upon me, yet I fear the world's scorn and doubt against us. How can we be the bearers of such a legacy when we are but two aged wanderers in the desert?" Abram stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Beloved Sarai, the Lord has not called us to fulfill this promise by our own strength. We are but vessels of His will. He has chosen us, and our trust in Him will render His plans unfaltering. Recall His promise, I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing." Genesis 12 verse 2. Sarai's heart fluttered at his reminder, the words stirring her spirit. Through her husband's faith, she found courage to stand against the tides of doubt that sought to overwhelm her. Days faded into weeks, and within the sacred sanctuary of her soul, Sarai felt the stirring of something miraculous. She began to attend the gatherings of her kin with renewed fervor, sharing not only her burdens but also the whispers of hope bestowed upon her. The women gathered, eyes bright with the light of shared faith, as Sarai brought forth testimonies of God's promise in her life, yet, the weight of impossibility still pressed heavily around her. In the stillness of one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with strokes of crimson, the Lord's voice broke through her thoughts once more. Sarai, I have not forgotten you. Rejoice, for your name shall be changed to Sarah, and you shall bear a son of laughter to fill the world with joy. At that moment, Sarai felt a tremor of divine energy coursing through her veins, illuminating the darkness of despair that once held her captive. But a question echoed faintly, could this be true? In silent reverie, she considered the laughter of a child. A mirthful sound that had eluded her grasp for so long. Yet, within the folds of her heart, laughter began to swell. As the moon rose high, casting silvery beams upon her tent, she resolved to take a bold step of faith. She knelt, lifting both hands to heaven, her voice rising in fervent prayer, O Lord of hosts, grant me strength to believe fully in your promises that are yes and amen. Let not my heart waver in doubt, for I long to see your glory manifested. That night, as her spirit surrendered to the will of God, she sensed the currents of fate shifting around her, preparing to usher in the arrival of a covenant promise. With each heartbeat, she anticipated the joy that would soon overwhelm her life, the divine transformation that awaited both her and Abram. Yet little did Sarai understand that her life would not only fulfill God's plan for her family but would also set into motion a testimony that would echo throughout the ages. For before the dawn of her new beginnings, the heavens whispered of greater things yet to come, legacy and lineage that would birth a nation, and thus, unbeknownst to her, the threads of divine purpose were being woven tighter, binding her story to a greater narrative that would unravel in the fullness of time. What she could not yet see was the astonishing ripple of faith that her belief would ignite, heralding the arrival of a promise blessed beyond measure. And it came to pass that in the days following her encounter with the Lord, Sarah awoke with the dawn, the light of the sun pouring through the openings of her tent, a sign of new beginnings. She felt a surge of hope coursing through her heart, and she was stirred to rise early and prepare the morning meal. In her heart bloomed a newfound joy, a vibrant anticipation of what was yet to come. As Sarah prepared the bread and poured the milk, Abram emerged from their shared quarters, his presence radiating both strength and weariness. He could sense the change within Sarah, as if she had been touched by the hand of God himself. My wife, he called gently, a smile breaking the dawn's silence, what fills your heart with such light today? With a voice trembling yet bold, Sarah responded, The Lord has spoken to me, Abram. I believe that his promise is near, and I shall bear a son of laughter. The air around her felt electric with her proclamation, and the words echoed in the rising sunlight, but though Sarah's heart soared, Abram furrowed his brow, his spirit wrestling with a mingling of hope and the burden of past doubts. Behold, my beloved, how can we entertain such joy? He murmured. For I am old, and you, too, are advanced in years. In that moment, the Lord, who knows the hearts of men and women, moved within the stillness. He entered into their private council, assuring Abram. I am the Lord, who promised you this son. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you, and Sarah shall have a son. Genesis 18 verse 14, as these words washed over Abram, his eyes grew wide in realization, intertwining with the hope ignited in Sarah. The solemn note of promise echoed in the sacred air, and Abram's heart began to believe anew. They shared this wonder, each believing that within this very year, their lives would be forever transformed. Days turned into weeks as the weight of anticipation enveloped them. Sarah found herself amidst the gatherings of her kin, with each woman pressing in for counsel from her, drawn to the radiant glow of her faith. They marveled at the change in her countenance, for could it truly be that barren Sarah would bear a child? Yet amidst her gatherings, whispers arose like dust devils. Sarah heard the murmurs of doubt, casting shadows over her joy. Could it be the laughter of a child from Sarah? Surely, it is a jest. Such words pricked her heart, threatening to unravel the very threads of hope the Lord had woven so carefully. One evening, after a particularly challenging conversation, Sarah took refuge in her tent. She knelt once more, pouring out her heart before the Lord, her voice filled with fervor and emotion. O God of Abraham, renew my faith. Grant the courage to withstand the scorn that plagues me. You, who have counted the stars, may I never forget that I am within your promise." In that sacred moment of surrender, Sarah felt a profound shift. The heavens seemed to echo around her, as if the age-old promises resounded within her very core. Hope took root, and together with Abram, they became beacons of belief amidst doubt, yet neither Abram nor Sarah could fathom the entirety of God's sovereign plan, which stretched further than the eyes could see. For beyond their present situation lay a promise that would encompass nations. As the world turned, the divine tempo of history prepared to unfold through their obedience, and just as they steadied their vision on the promise ahead, unbeknownst to them loomed the brink of a testament to faith that would illuminate the paths of many. For in times of despair, God crafted monumental legacies through the threads of faith. The laughter of their future child was but a whisper beckoning the destiny of a nation yet to be named. Thus, it was through moments of trial that the grand design of God's covenant would emerge, a tapestry of grace weaving through generations, foreshadowing the divine narrative yet untold. And it came to pass that as the seasons turned and the sun cast its warmth upon the land, Abram and Sarah continued in the faith that the Lord had stirred within them. Each evening, they would gather by the fire, sharing stories of old as the stars twinkled overhead, a reminder of God's promises etched in the sky. One day, with urgency in her heart, Sarah approached Abram. "Let us not grow weary in our waiting, my husband. The time draws near for the fulfillment of his word. We must prepare for the blessing that is to come." The firelight danced in her eyes, illuminating the fervor of her faith, yet Abram, still wrestling with his own uncertainties, replied, "Sarah, my heart longs for the promise, but the burden of years weighs heavily upon us. How can we be parents in our old age?" Doubt lingered in his voice, but he could not deny the flicker of hope kindling between them. As they spoke, the Lord broke into their discourse with a mighty whisper that swept through the tent. "Fear not, for I am the God who brings life from death and calls into existence that which does not exist. Your laughter shall soon echo through these walls, and nations will rise from your lineage." His voice was firm yet comforting, a divine anchor amidst their trials. From that moment onward, Sarah decided to embrace the fullness of faith. She invited the women of her household to journey with her in prayer and supplication. Together, they would walk beneath the stars, lifting their voices in praise, expecting the promise of God to unfold. As the moons passed, the echo of laughter began to stir the air. Each ripple across the waters of their lives whispered of miracles yet unseen. In moments of quiet reflection, Sarah would close her eyes and envision a child filling her arms with joy. There were times when hope would flicker its light, and she would feel the warmth of a promise drawing nearer, yet shadows of fear would creep in, reminding her of the inevitabilities of age and doubt. One morning, as Sarah tended to the tents, 3 men approached from the distance. Their presence was commanding yet familiar, and she stirred with a sense of reverence. "My lord," she addressed Abram with urgency, "the strangers approach us. Come, let us honor them with food and fellowship." As the men entered, Sarah overheard them discussing God's plan. "I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." The words pierced her heart like an arrow, and she felt a flood of emotions: joy, fear, disbelief. For it was at that instant, they looked directly upon her, and she couldn't contain her laughter. "After I have become old, shall I have pleasure, my lord being old also?" she asked, incredulous. But one of the men, with a voice that resonated like thunder, answered, "Is anything too difficult for the Lord?" In that moment, the realization struck her. This was no ordinary visit, these were messengers bearing the very breath of promises. Days passed like whispers, and Sarah came to understand the power of laughter in faith. It was both a weapon against doubt and a bridge to God's grace. She began to embrace the possibility of her own laughter mingling with the laughter of a son to come, envisioning the future that lay before her. Yet even as joy began to fill her heart, she could not perceive the fullness of what God was weaving through the fabric of her life. For as they began to prepare for this promised joy, the threads of a greater narrative unfurling would ultimately touch the hearts of generations to come. Thus she pondered, with her spirit ignited, what other mysteries lay hidden in the promise. Her laughter mingled with the heavens, echoing the heart of a God who delights in the impossible, inviting all to witness the unfolding story. for the time had not yet been revealed when the laughter of her child would usher in a covenant that would grace the earth. And it came to pass that Sarah, filled with a rekindled hope, took to heart the words of the mighty messenger. She sought the counsel of her sisters in faith, inviting them into the sacred space of prayer and anticipation. Each night, they gathered beneath the canopy of stars, their fervent prayers rising like incense before the Lord, echoing the promise that lay like a precious jewel within her soul. As the days turned to weeks, a quiet revolution began to stir within Sarah's heart. The laughter that once danced in disbelief transformed into a melody of joy, a prelude to the promise that was unfolding. One evening, as the sun sank beneath the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, Abram stood by the flocks, lost in contemplation. The Lord, who had been silently weaving a tapestry of destiny, spoke once more, saying to Abram, "I shall establish my covenant with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations." Abram, heart agreeably tremulous, fell on his face, a mixture of reverence and wonder flooding his being. "How shall this be?" he whispered, "for I am but a man without heirs." Then God reassured him, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and thus you shall no longer be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations." The weight of the name reverberated through the air, stirring the very essence of his being. In that moment, the promise of legacy and lineage etched itself deeper within him. Abram arose, his heart swelling with newfound courage, and he found Sarah preparing their evening meal. "My wife," he thought, "shall soon be a mother." He shared the revelation, each word a warmer embrace of faith, igniting the spark of assurance in Sarah's heart. "The Lord has promised us descendants that will be like the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore," he declared, his voice imbued with the power of divine conviction. Yet amid the joy, Sarah's laugh, once echoed in disbelief, now sounded forth as a testament to the patience and faithfulness of God. For in her heart was the stirring realization that God's timing is perfect, and his plans transcend the frailty of human understanding. Days rolled into months, and during one chosen morning, as the fragrant dew clung to the grass, an unmistakable movement stirred within Sarah. The whispers of joy transformed into a bubbling brook of life. A child. She held her breath, unable to comprehend the miracle that now lived within her. Every heartbeat echoed the grace of God who had remembered her. With laughter bursting forth, she gathered the women of her household, her voice rising above the rustling leaves. "The Lord has dealt bountifully with me," she proclaimed. The women joined in joyous celebration, recognizing that God had done for Sarah what he had promised. Each of their hearts resonated with the miracle unfolding, anticipating the new life that would not only bring joy to Sarah but also fulfill a divine promise. Yet in the tapestry of this divine story, another thread was being woven. Off in the distance, the land was abuzz with whispers of the impending birth, and the world watched, unaware that the laughter of a child would herald not only the birth of nations but pave the way for a covenant that spanned generations. And thus, as the moon rose high, bathing the world in its silver glow, Sarah looked to the heavens once more. "But what greater plan lies beyond this promise, Lord?" she pondered, lingering in deep reflection. For she could not yet fathom how her laughter would be the key to the very doors of faith that would unlock the destinies of many. And it came to pass that as the seasons changed, the swell of expectation grew stronger in Sarah's heart. She would often walk among the flowers blooming in the early light, pondering the promise the Lord had bestowed upon her. Each petal seemed to whisper of life, and each breeze carried with it the fragrant reminder of hope. One fateful day, the sun cast its warm embrace upon the earth, and the voice of the Lord once again broke through the silence. The Almighty called out to Abraham, "My friend, gather your loved ones, for a visitation is at hand. Today you shall not only witness the coming of a child but shall also be reminded of the strength of my covenant." Abraham, brimming with anticipation, hastily instructed Sarah to prepare as he called for the 3 travelers who approached under the shade of the oaks at Mamre. With gracious hearts, they accepted his invitation. Abraham, with fervent hospitality, provided them a feast worthy of kings, and as they dined, Sarah remained in the tent, listening intently. One of the visitors, whose appearance bore the mark of divine authority, turned toward Abraham and proclaimed, "I shall return to you at this season next year, and Sarah shall have a son." The air crackled with divine energy at these words, enveloping the region in a thick blanket of holy reverence. Within the tent, Sarah concealed herself, her ears perked, for the voice of the promise reached her even there. Yet, when she heard the words, disbelief surged through her once more, and she laughed quietly to herself, saying, "After I have grown old, shall I now have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" But the voice known by Abraham perceived her laughter and rebuked her, saying, "Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you." The tension in the air thickened as Abraham fell to his knees, gripped by the majesty of the moment, while Sarah was both grieved and astounded by her thoughts being laid bare before the Almighty. The laughter that had bubbled forth in doubt turned into a reflection of the very concern she had held deep within her heart, and as the sun set upon that extraordinary day, the visitors prepared to depart, imparting prophetic truths that would unfurl like a grand tapestry upon the earth. Abraham stood by the oaks, gazing after them, his heart swelling with resolute faith in God's promise. With each passing day, Sarah's doubts began to shake loose from her heart, transformed by the truth of the covenant. She cast her anxieties upon the Lord, recognizing the deepening strength within her as hope took root. She began to find solace in the whispers of her sisters in faith, gathering often to rejoice in the foretelling of life to come. Yet ever in the background, a shadow loomed. Sodom and Gomorrah, cities entwined in wickedness, were nearing their day of reckoning. And as the dust swirled where the travelers had trodden, a divine purpose unfolded, for while Sarah would nurture the promise of laughter, the faith of a nation was being fashioned in a heart that believed. In the unfolding drama of faith and sovereignty, the seed of purpose was sown deep within the soil of the earth, waiting for the appointed moment to burst forth with unimaginable glory. For even in the laughter of Sarah, God's artistry was at work, transcending the boundaries of time and reason. Thus, as Sarah fell into a gentle slumber that night, she dreamed not of the trials to come but of the sovereign plan unraveling before her. What deliverance might still shine through her laughter, she wondered, and whose lives would intertwine with the promise given to her. For the hand of God was weaving a story that would resonate through the ages. And it came to pass, in the days that followed, that the heart of Sarah was both heavy and light, wrestling between the promise of the Lord and the realities of her life. The whisper of hope turned into a melody that echoed through the chambers of her soul, and in this sacred tension, she sought to understand the ways of the Almighty. With each dawn, she witnessed the sun rise with renewed vigor, illuminating the shadows in her heart, replacing despair with anticipation. The days multiplied, yet the promise lingered like a sweet fragrance, stirring faith. Sarah found herself weaving garments, her hands busy with threads of expectation, praying that they would soon adorn her long-desired child. Then one morning, as the golden rays kissed the earth, a thought entered Sarah's mind. Could it be, she mused, that I, a woman of such age, shall glean joy where within I once sowed hopelessness? A laughter deeper than before filled her, and she surrendered her fears to the God who knits together the stars and calls them by name. Meanwhile, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, shrouded in darkness and unrighteousness, bore witness to their own seditions, their sins rising like smoke before the Lord. The cries of the innocent ascended, piercing through the heavens, igniting the divine anger. It came to pass that the judgment of those cities was at hand, for their wickedness could no longer be contained, and individual hearts would soon witness the fervent hand of judgment. Abraham, ever keen in spirit, understood the weight upon his heart as he stood at the oaks. He beseeched the Lord, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Far be it from you, O Lord, to destroy the righteous with the wicked. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?" His voice resonated with conviction as he sought to intercede for the cities, thinking upon the righteous few that remained, and the Lord responded, "If I find within Sodom 50 righteous, I will spare the whole place for their sake." A moment of silence followed, fraught with divine purpose. Abraham's heart stirred within him as he pressed on, his plea unfurling before the Almighty, drawing nearer in humility. "Suppose 5 are lacking, will you destroy the city for a lack of 5? To each of Abraham's petitions, the Lord responded with patience, reiterating his promise of mercy, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." As the negotiation continued, the sacred dialogue revealed the depths of God's mercy and Abraham's growing understanding of the daunting landscape before them. Little did they know that this exchange would echo through the ages, a stark contrast to the family that would soon usher in laughter and joy amid the dark shadow of divine wrath. And in this convergence of divine mercy and righteous anger, the wheels of destiny began to turn. Tasks intertwined, the promise of a child to Sarah that would birth a future nation and the impending judgment that would cleanse the cities of wickedness. As the day grew weary, the clouds thickened over Sodom and Gomorrah, as if nature itself anticipated the decree that would soon fall. Unbeknownst to Sarah, God's sovereign plan enveloped both the beginning of a miraculous lineage through her son, and the urgent need to purge the land of sin, paving the way for the new covenant. Thus, as night descended, the veils of time shifted, revealing not just a promise to Sarah, but a sweeping narrative destined to shape the world. For in the tapestry of human hearts wrestled amid divine purpose, Sarah's laughter would hold weight in a story unfurling with eternal implications. What other wonders lay in wait, shrouded in God's magnificent design? And it came to pass, as the twilight deepened and shadows stretched over the land, that the Lord spoke again to Abraham, saying, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave." Abraham's heart quaked within him, knowing the depths of their iniquity. Yet, still emboldened, he gazed upon the horizon, burdened by the plight of the righteous and the tempest of divine justice that loomed above the cities. "Will you indeed destroy the city if there are but 10 righteous found therein?" he asked, his voice a blend of urgency and reverence, praying silently for mercy to prevail. The Lord replied, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." The resolution of the divine hung over the town like an unsheathed sword, seeking truth in the midst of sorrow and sin. Abraham, sensing the conversation was over, turned away, yet he could not shake the wavering hope that flickered like a candle in his heart. Meanwhile, in the distant shadow of those cities, 2 angels journeyed toward Sodom, their mission cloaked in both solemnity and urgency. They entered where darkness concealed malice, and unsuspecting hearts danced in wickedness. The air felt thick with sin, a stench that rose before God, and they were moved with a divine resolve to rescue those who would heed the call of righteousness. Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, a flicker of righteousness surviving amidst the corruption. When he saw the angels, he rose to greet them, bowing with his face to the ground. "My lords, turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night, and wash your feet," he implored, knowing the perils that lurked outside their refuge. "Do not fear, for we shall abide in the streets," they replied, but Lot pressed earnestly, his heart heavy with the burden of foreknowledge. Reluctantly, they followed him, and the door was shut tight, for Lot had gleaned wisdom from the desperate wares of his city. As night unfurled its dark mantle, the men of the city surrounded the house, demanding with clamorous voices, "Bring forth the men that came in to you, that we may know them." Lot emerged, his heart pounding like the rhythm of a war drum, and pleaded, "Brothers, do not act wickedly. I have 2 daughters who have not known man, let me bring them to you instead." Yet their hearts were hardened, and they showed no remorse. "Stand back. This fellow came to sojourn, and now he would play the judge." They scorned, closing in like a tempest, but the angels reached forth, struck the men with blindness, and led Lot back into the house. "You must flee this place," they commanded. "We will destroy it because the cry against it has grown great before the Lord." Lot's heart trembled yet found solace in the urgency of their warning. He knew the fate of the cities rested precariously on the scales of divine justice. As dawn broke, a sense of urgency filled the air. The angels commanded, "Escape for your life. Do not look back, nor stop anywhere in the valley, flee to the hills, lest you be swept away." Lot hesitated, and the angel took him by the hand, pulling him away from destruction toward safety. In the awakening of that dire morning, the sun cast a glare upon the fields where evil had prospered. The destruction came as a storm, a fire that fell from heaven, unlike anything the world had seen. Yet somewhere in the distance, the sound of joyful laughter began to surface, signaling the arrival of a new day for Sarah, a woman chosen to bear a child of promise, a seed of hope amid desolation. It was then revealed, as the skies wept purification, the monumental role she would play in the unfolding of God's great narrative, a story woven through generations, interlacing mercy with judgment. What intertwined destinies awaited the chosen legacy, hidden in the folds of divine intention? And it came to pass that in the fullness of time, the sacred promise given to Sarah was to be fulfilled. As the sun rose in the crisp dawn, she felt a stir within her womb, a vibrant echo of the laughter that had long remained unexpressed. The women of her household gathered once again, each bearing witness to the divine workings that had transpired since she had first clung to hope. "Rejoice," they declared, "for the Lord has made you the mother of nations." With each heartbeat, Sarah embraced the certainty of God's promise, and her laughter, once tinged with doubt, transformed into a joyful hymn. "I shall name him Isaac," she pronounced, her voice imbued with praise. And Isaac, which means laughter, was to embody the very essence of the promises fulfilled, a testament to the God who brings forth life from barrenness, who weaves joy into the fabric of human heartache. As the months stretched on, the earth held its breath, waiting in eager anticipation of the seed sown in faith. And so it was that on a day marked by divine ordination, Sarah brought forth her son, the air blooming with the fragrance of miracles. "God has made laughter for me," she whispered in awe, cradling Isaac against her breast, tears of joy cascading down her cheeks, a reminder of the tears once shed in sorrow, now transformed into a balm of delight. Abram, now Abraham, stood at the threshold of their tent, embracing the undeniable truth of God's covenant with fervor anew. The promise of countless descendants had begun with the joyous cry of a child, and in this moment, the horizon shimmered with the hope of a mighty lineage. He bowed his head in gratitude, acknowledging the faithfulness of the Lord who had sustained him through doubt and trial. "Truly, our God is the God of the impossible," he exclaimed, glancing heavenward, as if to capture each star that twinkled in tribute to the promise. His heart swelled with the knowledge that their legacy transcended their understanding and would echo through generations yet to come, and thus, the laughter of Isaac became a beacon, not solely for Sarah and Abraham but for all those who would follow in their footsteps. Through this child, nations would thrive, and in the coming ages, the hope of redemption would unfold not just for one lineage, but for all humankind, as the story of faith interwoven with grace stretched beyond the confines of their tent. Sarah, alongside Abraham, became heralds of God's unrelenting mercy, their hearts forever entwined with the sacred narrative of faith knitted into the core of creation. Such was the legacy they birthed, one of laughter and warmth amidst the shadows, one that broke into the darkness of despair like the first rays of dawn dispelling the night. In the years that followed, as Isaac grew, the world turned, often oblivious to the miraculous revolutions conceived in faith. For while the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah had met their reckoning, a seed of righteousness was firmly planted in Sarah's household. What miraculous wonders awaited, for even then, the tapestry of God's divine purpose continued to unfurl, a continuous weaving of stories that would unite the faithful across eras, echoing the laughter of grace. As the evening shadows danced upon the ground, Sarah would gather her kin, recounting the faithfulness of the Lord, planting seeds of belief that her children could nurture, so that they too would look upon the stars, not just as reminders of the promises made, but as a reconnecting thread of divine truth in their own lives. In time, she would speak of the importance of laughter amidst struggle, for it was the laughter of faith that liberates, that forges a pathway into the fullness of God's love, illuminating the hearts of those willing to believe. And so, with Isaac as the first assurance of what God can accomplish through a heart unyielding to doubt, the legacy of Abraham and Sarah lived on. They became a testament to the unfathomable grace of the Lord, whose designs are far grander than our imaginations can conceive. And now, dear friend, as we reflect on this profound journey of faith and laughter, I urge you with all sincerity, subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that can ignite your spirit. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth, so please, leave a like now and engage in this divine mission. Your comments hold the power to touch many. Share your reflections on this story and how it may resonate with your faith journey. And remember, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth, for only true believers understand the importance of illuminating the world with the light of His Word. Let us fervently witness together how faith, laughter, and love abide forever.